everybody, and welcome back to my channel for this Tuesday morning, afternoon or evening across the world where you may be at. And today I've got an article for you from the University of the City of London here in the UK, and I found it quite an interesting story to bring to your attention. And the headline reads, British media needs to change the negative portrayals of autism. So as an autistic woman, obviously I jumped on this story. I want to read it to you, what it says. It says, research supports the view that newspapers should take steps to represent autistic people more positively. This article was written by Mr. George Wigmore, who is the Senior Communications Officer, and it was published online on Thursday the 22nd of August of this year. And it says, the British press tends to portray autistic people negatively, with no significant improvement over time. According to a new study, however, the choice of language can greatly influence these portrayals. The paper, led by a researcher from the City of St George's, University of London, analysed sentiments towards autism and autistic people in British newspapers from 2011 to 2020 as been evaluated by autistic people. The authors found that newspapers expressed more positive sentiments when autism was associated with a person rather than discussed in general terms. Furthermore, using identity-first language, i.e. e.g. autistic person, was linked to more positive sentiments compared to person-first language, i.e. a person with autism. While broadsheets depicted autistic people somewhat more positively compared to the tabloids, no difference was observed between left-leaning and right-leaning newspapers. Published in the journal Autism in Adulthood, the research supports the view that newspapers should take steps to represent autistic people more positively. This is particularly important given the role they play in shaping and shifting attitudes towards autistic people in society. Media portrayals. Newspapers often portray autistic people negatively and stereotypically, emphasizing the challenges and weaknesses instead of their needs and strengths. Media outlets also frequently use language and terminology that does not respect or reflect how autistic people wish to be referred to. This language has a negative impact on the mental well-being of autistic people and hinders the acceptance. To understand more about the portrayals of autistic people within British newspapers, the researchers asked 5 autistic people to assess the sentiment towards autism and autistic people in 1,000 quotes from British newspapers between 2011 and 2020. The autistic experts, who did not know the newspaper title or time of publication, made their judgments based on 2 aspects: how warmly newspapers discussed autistic people and how competent they portrayed them to be. The researchers then examined the overall judgments of warmth and competence. They considered variations in language, context and terminology, such as using general and impersonal references to autism, or identity-first and person-first language. They also examined potential differences between broadsheets and tabloids, left and right-leaning newspapers, and changes over time. Study findings. The majority of quotes from British newspapers were found to be low in warmth and competence. Furthermore, impersonal references to autism tended to be rated lower in warmth and competence than references linking autism to a person. At the same time, identity-first language was judged higher in warmth and competence than person-first language. Although quotes from broadsheets were assigned similar levels of warmth, they exhibited more higher competence than those from the tabloids. However, no significant differences were found between the left-leaning or right-leaning papers in terms of their warmth or competence. The study had also noted some inconsistent changes over time. After a shift towards more positive representations between 2015 and 2017, newspaper portrayals tended to become more negative between 2018 and 2020. The lead author of this study, Dr. Themis Karaminas, lecturer in psychology at City St George, said, the coverage of autism in the press and media has increased in recent years. While lately the notion of neurodiversity is gaining more and more recognition within educational and some professional settings, some recent studies have found indications of progress, albeit small, to more positive views towards autism in the public discourse. However, this new study, which is based on the perceptions of autistic people, challenges that notion that media coverage of autism has become positive over the years. This finding is particularly interesting as newspapers often still cover stories on the supposed cure or supposed reversal of autism, which are hurtful and offensive to the whole autism community. Our study also highlights the critical importance of language and terminology towards autistic people. Autistic people should be involved in guiding newspapers to be more inclusive coverage, and it is crucial that newspapers respect the community's language preferences. Our study offers a range of positive and negative examples of autism coverage which could aid within this transition. So there is a link, I believe, here. There is a link which I'll link down in the video description. So as an autistic person, what are my opinions? My opinions is, as an late diagnosed autistic woman, I think I totally agree with this article from the University of London. British media does need to change their portrayals towards autism to be more of a positive and inclusive nature, but unfortunately, some of the stories that British left-leaning and right-leaning newspapers cover with regards to autism or neurodiversity are quite negative, because usually they're stories about supposed cures or autistic people being beaten up or autistic people being bullied or autistic people being harmed or autistic people going missing, or so a lot of the stories that they do actually cover, unfortunately, are very, very negative. They are very not inclusive, and some of the language is very medicalized. So again, it's not very inclusive when it comes to language or understanding of articles written about autistic people or written for autistic people or written about autistic people or neurodiverse people. So again, it can cause communication difficulties and misunderstandings with wording, with language. Again, each autistic person is different. Some autistic people may not struggle to read it. Some autistic people might struggle to read it. So it just depends on communication preferences of how they're able to read or not read the situation, or how they're able to read a newspaper or they choose not to read a newspaper. For me, I love reading newspapers. I think it's very beneficial to get two different viewpoints from a newspaper. So sometimes I might read something like The Sun, sometimes I might read something like The Guardian, or sometimes I might read The Mirror, and then I might read The Independent. So I basically go different directions on getting my information, how I feel it's going to benefit me, to make my own educational assumptions, my own educational thoughts. As an autistic woman, we have got a lot better when it comes to representing autistic people better in the media, but we still have a long way to go. I think the problem is, until we have a media that understands autism better, and we have people working within the national newspapers that are autistic or that are neurodiverse, a lot of things aren't going to change. Unfortunately, that's going to take years of autism training, neurodiversity training. It's going to take a lot of employees to become more disability friendly, more disability inclusive. And I think this is down to the fact it's down about money, it's down to funding opportunities, it's down to education, it's down to acceptance, it's down to the language. It's autistic people and neurodiverse people need to go into these establishments and actually give their side and give their own personal expertise of training, because until we get that balance of working with the neurotypical community and the autistic community, we're not going to see each other's viewpoints, and we need to be working together rather than against each other. So I think this is a very good article that is very understanding on one side and then trying to involve the autistic people on the other, but I think we still have a long way to go when it comes to language, acceptance, full inclusiveness, and I think the more quicker we get autistic people on board within national broadsheets, whether it's a left-leaning or right-leaning newspaper or tabloid, it shouldn't really matter, as long as we get autistic people fairly represented, their voices listened to, their experiences heard, their stories told, then British newspapers and tabloids can become better. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please click like, share and subscribe to my channel. That would be awesome. And leave me a comment down below in the video description, and I will hear and see you again soon. Bye.